Okay, welcome to the program. This is the Otherppl podcast, a weekly show featuring in-depth interviews with today's leading writers. I'm Brad Listi here in Los Angeles. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Hope everything's okay wherever you happen to be. Don't forget to subscribe to this show wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow me on Bluesky and Instagram. Today I'm going to be talking with my old friend, Ken Baumann. He has a new novella out called The Christian, a comedy. And it's one of these books that needed to be written. It's about a guy who tries to live like Jesus in contemporary America. He tries to actually embody the very radical teachings of Jesus Christ in this country as presently constituted. And I think I say as much to Ken in the interview where I'm like, yeah, why didn't I think of that? It's one of these thought experiments that needed to be undertaken, and Ken Baumann did it. It's a very interesting and affecting book. And the conversation that we had was kind of epic. It was wonderful. We talk about like faith and loss of faith and like crises of the spirit. Not only personally, but maybe on a broader scale too. Talk about depression and like how that can affect a human life and what it means to come out on the other side of it and how you get changed by the most difficult experiences in your life. It's a really heartfelt and meaningful conversation, kind of perfect for a Sunday episode. And that is coming up in just a bit. A reminder before we get there that I have a weekly email newsletter. I would love it if you would sign up over at bradlisti.substack.com. It's a great way to keep up with this podcast. I will let you know on a weekly basis about the latest episodes of the show. I also share a list of links to things that I've been reading and finding interesting. So check out my newsletter over at bradlisti.substack.com. And I also want to give a quick plug to my new company, Deep Dive, which is going to be launching soon, any day now. It's coming soon. We're really getting close to the finish line. If you are new to the show or you haven't heard yet, Deep Dive is a new company that I'm starting that specializes in the creation of long-form educational audio. And the debut course from Deep Dive is called How to Write a Novel. And it features more than 50 hours of never-before-heard conversations with dozens of today's most acclaimed contemporary writers, people like Emily St. John Mandel, Steve Almond, Melissa Broder, Vivi Ganeshananthan, Purachista Hakpur, Antoine Wilson, Matt Bell, Matthew Salasis, Deb Olin Unferth, Hannah Pittard, Lynn Steger-Strong. The list goes on. So there has never been a writing course quite like this one, and it is going to be available via the Deep Dive app, and you can listen to it wherever you go. It's one of these courses that, I think like the premise of the course for me is that it's something that can accompany you over the course of, say, a calendar year as you work on a draft of your book. So I like to imagine it as a writing course that is commensurate with the scale of the task at hand. And it's going to be available soon. So you can follow Deep Dive on Instagram and Bluesky, and you can sign up for the wait list for the course over at www.deepdive.audio. I will also keep you posted about when the company is officially launched, like right here on the podcast. So stay tuned. Today's episode is brought to you by Tin House, publisher of the debut novel Wanting by Claire Jia. Wanting is the official July pick of the Otherppl book club. That is my book club. I would love it if you would join the Otherppl book club. You get a new book delivered to your door every 30 days. I interview all book club authors right here on this show. So you can listen and then read, or read and then listen. It's up to you. It makes for an enriching and holistic literary experience. And you will hear me in conversation with Claire Jia soon. That interview is in the works. Wanting, her debut novel, is a story of friendship and desire across two countries, China and America. And it is just riveting and beautifully rendered And I'm very excited about this book and about talking with Claire Jia about her debut novel, one of the most acclaimed debuts of the summer. So one more time, the book is called Wanting, and it's by Claire Jia, available now from Tin House. All right, so it is now time for the main event, my conversation with Ken Baumann. Ken is the author of 7 novels and 3 works of nonfiction. He was an actor in film and television back in the day. That's when I first got to know him. He was on The Secret Life of the American Teenager, if you remember that show on ABC Family. And then he left that life. He left his acting life. He left Los Angeles. He moved to Santa Fe. And he's been there ever since. He is the founder of Sator Press. And he is studying canonical texts at St. John's College. That was part of his move from Los Angeles to Santa Fe. He went on to St. John's College and got this really wonderful liberal arts education. He's a really brainy guy, Ken is. And he's also really good at Magic the Gathering. I want to say he was world champion at some point. And I got to say, I know nothing about Magic the Gathering, so I'm not sure what that even means, but he's really good at it. He lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And like I was saying, we had a really, really good talk about a lot of real life stuff. And I'm excited to share the conversation with you. So let's just get to it. Here I am with Ken Baumann, and his new book, one more time, is called The Christian, a comedy.
This is the danger of good ideas in my experience. If you have a good idea, it sort of compels you to do it, to like make it real. And I just had, for a while, after a sort of strange spiritual experience that I had, like I still don't even know how to talk about it. It was just one of those like capital S spiritual experiences, vision type things. I had this a while ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And it kind of reoriented my thinking with regards to religion generally. I grew up in like a really sort of reactionary household against Christian conservatism. My dad was like a mechanic and like a smoker, ex-drug dealer, race car driver, atheist guy. My mom was just sort of like a Northern California hippie, agnostic, anything's possible type. And in our household, it was like, no, this shit, Christianity bullshit. And all of our neighbors are full of shit. They talk a big game about being good, and then they're cheap and they're miserly and they're mean and they're rude and they're bigoted and blah, 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 which often was the case. And so I grew up very like stiff-arming religion, thinking it very silly. And then I grew up and read some books and went, this is quite a big phenomenon, this whole religion thing. I think I gotta take this a little bit more seriously, and started to read. And in my teens, I had like a little Buddhist freak out where I thought for a year, and I was doing like Zen really seriously, really rigorously for like a year. And I was like, I'm just going to find my way to a monastery, and that's going to be my life. I'm going to call it quits. None of this Hollywood shit, no working, no family, no relationships. I'm just going to go be a monk. And I didn't do that. And then I sort of held the religious impulse at bay for a little while. And then 4 or 5 years ago, I was reading a bunch of Christian apologetics, just sort of out of a sense of curiosity. I had read Jarrett Kobeck's book, Only Americans Burn in Hell. And in that book, he kind of, the narrator at least, which is very related to Jarrett himself, cops to like having had a Christian conversion in the middle of I think a Guns N' Roses concert. And I was so taken aback by this. I was like, I know Jarrett. Jarrett is so acerbic and sassy and smart and like cosmopolitan. I'm like, how in the fuck did this guy have a Christian moment? Like, how does that make any sense? And so I spoke to him over the phone and just caught up, and he was cagey about it in the ways that he usually is. And he was just like, I'm just exercising a lot. I'm like, okay, Jarrett, fine. You don't want to talk about it. And so I just began to read Christian apologetics, and I had engaged with the Bible kind of seriously in the little college I went to.
Wait, I want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Just for people listening, what are Christian apologetics?
Christian apologetics are texts sort of justifying one's faith or belief in Jesus as Christ and in God, right? So they're sort of rhetorical, intended to be persuasive documents to try to, quell the skepticism of the Christian struggling to adhere to his faith or to convert a non-believer. And a good example of like a relatively popular 20th century Christian apologetical text is Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis.
Right.
And, that's the one where he's like, hey, this Jesus guy was either right or he was insane. And take your pick. Those are the two options, right? So it's like, it's very rhetorical. They are proselytizing documents. And I was trying to engage with them and see like, what's up here with this whole Christianity thing? Because I had a really interesting engagement with the New Testament, reading it as an adult, just sort of as a reader, trying to come at it neutrally, and found it fascinating and like read it in the Greek and tried to really like get into it. And so that all was swirling around in my head. And then one morning I had like a strange vision, spiritual experience thing.
Like, okay, so what does that mean?
Yeah. So this is something that, and it's something I don't think I'll ever feel equipped to talk about it precisely, but I was in my bed. It was maybe 6 o'clock in the morning. I was sort of in and out of sleep, where you wake up, you open your eyes a little bit, you see where you are, and then you lapse back into sleep. I was in that mode. And I had this vision where I was walking down a country road. It sort of looked like the Italian countryside. And I saw to my left a man-made pond, and it was sunset and golden light was sort of streaming through the trees. It was very beautiful. And in the pond, there was a half-submerged tractor. And I felt like I should swim in this. Like there's nothing else to do. This looks great. I want to get in the water. I get in the water, and then suddenly my wife is there swimming with me. And this is strange because in real life, my wife cannot swim. She doggy paddles, begins to laugh because she's nervous, and then begins to sink because she's laughing and not swimming. And so in the dream, she was swimming super ably, and we're laughing and having a great time. And I think at some point in the dream, I look and I see that the man-made pond is like draining it, or a river is either feeding it or it's draining into a river. And I see this stone across which, water is just trickling, like a really thin little skin of water. And I'm looking at this stone, and then all of a sudden I feel the most immense, really inarticulably profound sense of peace and warmth and acceptance, love, and it's just it's the like oceanic feeling, quote unquote, that Jung and it talked about. Like it's just this really infinite feeling of love and acceptance. And I begin to kind of come to out of the dream, and I'm weeping in my sleep. I'm just like, tears are just pouring down my face. And at the time I thought, well, this is like a gift. This was given to me. It was made for me. And here you go. Here is like a little experience of the ineffable, blah, blah, blah. And I associated it with Christianity. I was like, oh shit, this is the Jesus guy giving me a little wink, wink. Like, hey, here I am. And I woke up.
But you didn't see Jesus in the dream.
Nope. I didn't see Jesus. I felt some sort of personable presence, but it didn't really have a Christian character. When I woke up, I immediately started to try to make sense of it in terms of the framework with which I'm most familiar, which is Christianity, having grown up around it and then studied it. But really the central content or message of the dream was just that this love is like an act. It coheres reality. So in other words, reality is kept together by this sense of love, this extension of love, that this is not a moral thing. In other words, that you don't have to be good to feel this and to know that it's the case. You could be a criminal, you could be in a coma. It doesn't matter, that this love is available to you no matter what, in any circumstance. And it has nothing to do with morality. And this is still pretty hard for me to try to make sense of. I'm a pretty moralizing type of guy. And so after this vision, I was like, oh shit, I guess I have to do the Christianity thing now, because this was the most profound, intense feeling of my life, comparable only to falling in love, and being in that psychosis. And I need to now change my life to make sense of it and to take it seriously, because it felt completely true. And so I went to churches and stuff, and I talked to guys in robes and was like, what, is this,
what happened?
Yeah. What happened? Does this make sense? Should I be here? And I tried to take it all seriously. And I realized over the course of 2 years of kind of trying to plug myself into some structure that the experience itself wasn't it didn't belong to any one sort of religion. It felt more sort of perennial philosophy-ish, that this is just the truth. It's sort of agnostic of religious structures. It's agnostic of ideology. Doesn't really matter.
I was going to say, because it sounds to me like what a Buddhist would call a satori, like a flash of insight, like liberating insight, or, these states can sometimes be accessed. They're called the jhana states in meditation, which are super deeply concentrated states. I mean, there's all sorts of, I just think there's a lot of crossover between traditions, and there's probably a language for this in Islam too, I would imagine, if you dug around, right?
Yep. I would hope so. I'm going to do that digging soon. But yeah. And so having had that experience, I was like, okay, well, now I got to deal with that for the rest of my life. So good luck to me. But also, and that experience has helped me stay alive, right? I mean, that's a very useful thing to believe. It turns out it's impractical, but it's very useful. And
wait, and just to interrupt, the thing that helps keep you alive is just this knowledge or this deep feeling that this love permeates the universe and is kind of what's helping reality to cohere.
Yeah, and that it's available to me at all times, no matter my circumstance or sense of self or self-hatred or whatever. That is the capital T truth, and any sort of conviction otherwise is just sort of intellectualizing and torturing myself. So it's been useful to come back to that. And maybe it's crazy, and maybe it's just the product of a desperate, depressed mind reaching for something that'll keep itself afloat. Whatever. I don't. The sort of rationalizations are not interesting to me anymore. But the experience left me sort of breathless, and I needed to make sense of it. And then engaging with Christianity stuck in my head. I was just like, this is such a strange thing. This notion of a God made incarnate and sacrificing itself and blah, blah, blah. And so I have been thinking on and off about American Christianity for a long time. I mean, probably since I was a kid, and having engaged with the New Testament just as a reader, as an adult, it's a pretty hard thing to see, to try to make sense of that, what's in the text and then what's practiced, and particularly in this country, which is so profane, deeply profane. I remember during, I forget when it was. It must have been 2016 or something. I saw some Army Humvee in the Capitol with a giant cross duct taped to its side, and I was just like, "This is a perfect image, a perfect little metonym of what American Christianity has become." And so I just have always thought, what would happen if some just average asshole went, I'm going to do this. I'm going to actually do it. I'm going to try it. I'm going to just do what the Jesus guy did and see what happens. Because that seems to be the best way to be. And this has been something I've thought about a lot. And particularly, I've had a very long abiding interest in the notion of people walking away. And particularly in literary constructions, like novels about people who just change their lives on a dime or leave or disappear. That's always been really compelling to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, what could somebody walk away? In other words, could they change their life so significantly in American culture that it seems to be alien? It seems to be hostile It's like a invading body to the culture at large. Could they Christian so hard that they're essentially repelled, like a bad organ transplant or something? And I was trying to figure out what to do for my 10th book, and that number felt significant for just kind of boring masculine reasons. And I was like, well, I think I want to write a comedy. I've written a lot of serious stuff, a lot of dark stuff, and I think I want to try to make people laugh. And I think I did that to some extent, but it winds up being a sad book, as all my books tend to be quite sad. But I wanted to adopt the frame of a comedy, because I do think that it is the first is tragedy, then is farce thing is a helpful frame with which to assess literary projects and history and one's own life, I found. And I was like, what does a book look like in which both tragedy and farce with regards to one central character trying to do something extraordinary? What does that book look like? And I just tried to write a book that did that in a really short amount of time, because people's attention spans are very different now than they were 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, this is, for people listening, this is a book that's told in like first person peripheral POV, like the story of this guy named Mike, who undertakes this project of actually trying to live like in a really sincere way, like Jesus. It's related by the narrator, who's Mike's friend and is kind of witnessing this himself. So he's kind of a proxy for the reader, which I thought was a shrewd choice, from a point of view perspective. It'd be a lot harder to write it from Mike's POV. I'm sure you might have tried maybe in the drafting and figured that out.
I just thought, like I was thinking about the history of the early Christian church or community. And I was like, if it weren't for that Paul guy, I don't think this thing gets off the ground in the way that it did. So I was like, what's the role of the sort of witness? And even though Paul wasn't a witness to anything historically, he was a witness to maybe his own experience and the experience of other folks in his little community, but was not at all a contemporary of Jesus of Nazareth. But what was, if you have just somebody who's motivated to carry the message and tell the story, that to me feels very interesting literarily, but also I think just socially, that there's something about the tale told by the believer that can almost be stronger than the tale told by the prophet or the messianic figure, I think.
Yeah. And I think like there's also the profit motive. Like when you're building this out into an organization and a business, like not to be crude, but that's what it becomes, right? Like you've got to have members. Yep. There's got to be some tithing. There's got to be a way to build these churches,
Yeah.
So it's worth pointing out. I mean, it's an obvious thing, but it doesn't necessarily get said as much as it probably should. But when Jesus was alive in his time and was, wandering around, what was it? Nazareth, or what was it called back then? Am I forgetting the name of the place? It wasn't called Israel. It was called
Galilee.
Yeah, Galilee, all those places, but what was the country or the region called something that I'm forgetting in that era? I don't know, but it's not important. The point is that he wasn't a Christian. Yeah. He wasn't preaching Christianity.
Yeah.
Like all these terms and these organizations and this infrastructure got built after the fact. Like my theory of the case is like a guy like Jesus or a guy like Siddhartha Gautama or a guy like Muhammad or any figure of like radical spiritual insight around whom a kind of movement coalesces. They're probably all saying more or less the same thing, but maybe the interpreters or the witnesses end up, translating it in ways that might be distinguishable from one another or distinct from one another. Mm-hmm. Like, is that how you see it? Or are you now in a place where you're like, Jesus was unique?
I don't know. I mean, I think that Huxley book, The Perennial Philosophy, it's cool. It's nice to see the sort of parallelism among all of these different types of spiritual thinking and argumentation, and also just the sort of like social impulse that's really seems to be structurally baked in to these religious teachings, the socializing impulse, the sort of impulse to say, find people with whom you can trust yourself and put yourself in communion with those people and keep them in your life and try to extend that feeling outward, sort of regardless of circumstance. That isn't unique to Christianity. I think it has its starkest literary expression in the Gospels, because whoever, handful of literate Jews, doctors, whoever were cooking up those books, they're pretty good writers. Like Mark, that's an all-timer. That ending of Mark, where it's just like, oh yeah, so they were afraid, book over, period, end. Like, that's one of the best endings in literary history. That,
wait. So the end of the Gospel of Mark ends with, so they were afraid?
Yep.
And who's they? Just people?
Folks who came upon Jesus's tomb, talk with the guy in a white robe. The guy's like, no, Jesus ain't here. But the tomb's open. And then they're terrified. And that's the end of the book. And that is, at least I think the contemporary scholarly understanding says that's the oldest gospel. That's the oldest one there is. And I think that's a very honest and profound way to end a text about people coming to realize that everything has now been inverted, that the order of morality and the notion of a spiritual elect and history itself, everything has been flipped upside down. And that's what they're left with. They're left with an empty tomb and themselves. And they were afraid. And I'm like, so whoever was writing the Gospels, they were just cooking. They were on fire, And like, so I think that the starkest literary expression is that I've seen is in the New Testament. I'm not so widely read though. I mean, I want to look at more stuff, but so I think that plus, a guy like Paul just being really politically savvy and extremely motivated and a hell of an organizer, just like adapting the message to the culture of the folks whom he wanted to receive it, like writing to the Greeks and being like, hey, so this Christianity thing, let me tell you how it deals with sex and sensuality. And then writing to the Romans and he's like, hey, let me tell you how it deals with like public feasts and political, relating yourself to other people politically. Like he knew what to say. He knew how to cater the message to the audiences in question. And I think that, you just had some really extremely motivated, literate, brilliant people promulgating this story. And the story itself is very compelling.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
It's a great story.
It's also got, I want to say if my knowledge of religious history is not comprehensive, but I do recall reading about how much crossover there is between the story of Christ and the virgin birth and the resurrection with like pagan mythology that predates Christianity.
Absolutely.
So it's like an echo of a story that has been told through the centuries, and then it kind of takes shape with him and really takes off. They perfected it.
Yeah, exactly. It just was the best version of the story thus far, and had some unique features. And again, like there's a cool little book. It's out from Verso. I forget the name of the author. He's like, it's some extremely Greek name, like Christostomos or whatever is the surname. And it's called I think the social structure of early Christian communities or something like that. And he just is looking at anthropological and archaeological accounts and being like, who were these early Christians? Were they all just poor? Were they all just poor people doing communism together or what? And he comes to the conclusion that like, no, there are a lot of folks with bankrolls, there are a lot of sort of like champagne socialists writing the checks and giving up their property and saying, hey, come stay at my big house for a while and eat my food. And that in other words, there's the material circumstances were there. The message appealed to people of many different sort of strata in the class system at the time. And then you had guys like Paul who just were pretty talented writers and organizers. And so the terror and promise of the radical person, the sort of radical ethics as it's practiced on earth, that I think is best related by someone who's seen it, not someone who can bring themselves to practice it. Because if you write from the perspective of somebody who's practicing it, it loses its alien character. And in order to be really striking and really affecting, and also kind of an indictment, you have to have, I think, the outsider relating the tale. You can't have the person themselves relating the tale, because it needs to feel like a challenge, I think.
Yeah, no, that's like, I mean, you've said a lot that like resonates. And I think it's important to point out, like, these movements don't happen on their own. They don't happen simply because there's some radical figure with like an incredible, like a spiritual savant is kind of how I think of them.
Yeah.
Like a spiritual genius essentially is what a Jesus figure would be, or a Buddha figure would be. But those people don't lodge themselves into the like human imagination, like writ large, without the help of these witnesses who function as a kind of sales staff. I mean, not to be crude about it, but you also have to have the benefactors. Like you talk about the sort of champagne socialists in Jesus's time who were, you know, opening their homes or offering food or whatever it is, resources to the movement. I want to say, like, and I don't mean to keep going back to Buddhism, but it's the one that I know the best.
No, this is good.
But like Jedda's Grove, which is where the Buddha's monastery was, like his main monastery, where he did like the vast majority of his work and gave like the most of his talks, was financed, I think, by a king or by like a local. There's like a wealthy businessman in Buddhist lore named Anathapindika or something like that. And this is a guy who basically just emptied the vault and gave all of his wealth. Like, and honestly, like went into bankruptcy after he did this, you know, but you have to have those kinds of people who are like rich, true believers. It can't just be like the proletariat, like lining up for the soup kitchen. You've got to have people who are able to finance it and people who are willing to like bear witness in writing. Yeah.
And lead by example in a way that seems, again, more relatable. You know, you have the spiritual genius, but they seem to sort of enter history fully formed, strangely. And I think that that's hard for people around them to make sense of. But if you know, oh yeah, I remember this guy, he's rich. I've seen him in his nice carriage and you know, he's getting carried around by folks and holy shit, he gave up all his money. Well, maybe I pay attention now. This seems like maybe there's something here. So like seeing people really sacrifice and suffer for the sake of their conviction is that's very intoxicating. And and I think you also get a sense that becoming wrapped up with a spiritual movement or a cult, that sense of intoxication, that sense of being sort of swept away into something that you have no control over, that's very alluring. People want to, you know, yield their lives to a larger cause, and oftentimes, and I feel like that's if you get a cause that has the juice, you get a leader that has the juice, and then also people who are really destroying their lives to follow this person. Why wouldn't you believe it to be worthwhile? You know, what other signal are you waiting for, I guess?
I think about this. Like, I don't think maybe I've been in the presence of somebody who like had like an advanced spiritual knowledge, but I can't say that I've ever like been like, well, that person, it's like the magic person.
Me too. Like, I'm so that's so antithetical to me. I just like, I feel allergic to it or something.
Yeah, but I mean, like, at the same time, I'm kind of hungry for it. I would love to meet somebody like that.
This is good. Why do you think you have that hunger?
Because I want to quell my doubt that it's not like this idea that it's not possible for a human being wired as we are to transcend their suffering or to find a way to like true wisdom. I want to believe that that's possible. And so if I could find somebody who really embodied it, that would be a great comfort. And so I think that's why we look for it. And then, there's like a social function to it as well. Like you say, people are very hungry to surrender themselves to a cause that feels larger and to be sort of subsumed by that because it's a reprieve from being tortured by your own mind. And, you know, and we're social creatures. And so then you feel like you're a part of something. It gives your life meaning. And then there's comfort that you take in it. And I think some of that stuff is real. Like, I don't think it's necessarily it's not a bad thing, you know, and I think it can easily devolve into like really culty, like insular behavior that leads to like a litany of troubles.
I mean, I think that's interesting, that the idea that in order to quell doubt and sort of self-torture in all of its intellectual forms. The idea exists that there's a person that could help you exit that. In other words, like there's a problem within which you live, and if I just meet the right person, I could exit the problem. I could transcend, right? Or I could see proof of having transcended the problem.
Yeah.
And that to me that's all wrapped up in that interest I've had for decades now of the people who walk away like that and who just seem to depart or seem to reject entirely. Like that notion to me, and of course that's wrapped up with suicide too. This notion is such a structuring interest for me aesthetically and intellectually that like I jokingly tell folks, when they ask me about my books, I'm like, I just write the same book over and over again. I just keep trying to come at it at a different angle, each time. And I think that the central question that all my books pose are just, can you escape?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's very interesting to me too. Like the people who walk away, the true radicals who actually like walk the walk.
I mean, that's the thing. I think that everyone theoretically on paper should have the strength. Like if I were to say, okay, Brad, like if you were to whatever, do the Buddha thing tomorrow entirely and just, walk and be enlightened and non-judgment and let desire pass through you and just help and be compassionate and kind. But also you got to be poor and all that stuff. Like you could just theoretically wake up tomorrow and walk out of your house and never come home and like try to do that thing. You wouldn't be embedded in your life anymore. You wouldn't have the social relationships and the loving relationships, and you wouldn't be able to extend compassion to the same people. But anyone on paper can just wake up and walk out of their life. And there are historical examples of, right, people who have done this, and it seems so strange and inhuman and inhumane, right, to just abandon everything. But I don't think it's actually that hard physically or materially to do it. You have to reject all of the convictions that you hold dear and all the inertia that you have and all the habits of mind and habits of life. But you can just get out of your bed and walk out the front door and never come home. Anyone can do that. The
Buddha walked out on his wife and son.
Yeah.
He had a wife and son. That people don't realize that. So like, it's like, I don't know, that's an interesting thing to flag.
This is the same thing. Socrates, like, not seeing his family ever. Jesus saying, yeah, you got to hate your mom and dad. You got to reject your family. Like this shit is real. People have a notion that in order to live a kind of simplified, morally centered or oriented life, you have to reject all of the sort of common social obligations that are expected of you. And that, It seems insane, but it's on paper.
Well, but this is like part of, I think, my enduring like spiritual question, and something that I suspect is at least in part deeply true, which is that the prevailing cultural value system on this planet, and I guess maybe in particular here in the United States, which is kind of infected the whole planet or most of the planet at this point, is deeply at odds with like deep truth and how we should actually be living if we wanted to be sane and care for one another and care for this planet.
Yep.
And so what seems likely to me is that if we were to conduct ourselves in accordance with this kind of knowledge, it would look very strange.
Yep.
And probably objectionable to most people.
Yep.
Like, and I think like this life of a renunciate, if you think about the way that monastics live or people who are, I guess, like really walking the walk, it's like a completely different mode of operation. And it's bringing to mind for me, were you the person, I think it was you who told me to read The Man Who Quit Money by Mark Sundin?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So this tracks with like your interest about people who walk away. But I read The Man Who Quit Money. And then I also read Mark Sundin's other book about people who are like the contemporary Back to the Landers. I'm totally.
Oh, whoa, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I'm forgetting the name of it, but his work is interesting. He's on this beat.
Yeah.
He's like very interested in what we're talking about. And The Man Who Quit Money is about a guy who lives in Moab and has for years and just doesn't use money and dumpster dives and like lives in caves and is like the happiest motherfucker alive. You know, he's not like conventionally crazy. You know what I'm saying? He's not like somebody he's just a guy who's like, yeah, I'm not doing it. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting book for that reason. Cause you're like, yeah, it's very hard to do. Yes. In some ways, but there are people who have made the conscious decision to operate outside of the system. And probably it's the same as it ever was. Like Jesus would have been a guy who was doing this. And in his time, you know, as he amassed a following, eventually came to be viewed as a threat by the powers that be. And they fucking killed him.
Yeah. Yep.
And, you know, reading your book about a guy in contemporary times who actually tries to live like Jesus in this country as presently constituted, with like MAGA Christianity being like the prevailing ideology.
Yeah.
Like I say this in jest, but I don't think it's that far off from the truth. Like if an actual Christ figure were to start rising up in American culture and amassing a following, I feel like the Republicans would like be perfectly fine if he or she were like publicly fed into a wood chipper, like Fargo style. And they'd all be wearing their red hats and like masturbating and speaking in tongues while it happened. Like, I mean, that's kind of where I think things are. It's so crude, the state that we find ourselves in. And Christianity's been perverted in such an offensive and offensively stupid way that I feel like the whole project needs like a total reimagining. It's just so corrupted and it's so far removed, I think, from the actual teachings.
I mean, it's a really difficult thing if for anybody who's listening, regardless of sort of how entrenched you are or not with regards to Christianity, just go read the New Testament. Read it like you would anything, you know, just try to read it well and closely. And man, there's some stuff in there that seems real alien to the contemporary moment. The whole non-judgment thing, you know, speaking of Buddhism, that's a pretty unpopular political notion. The whole, just judge yourself first. Don't worry about what your neighbor's doing. Just focus on yourself. Get your shit in order first. That's anathema to the current moral and social order, which is to produce judgments as if you are a judgment producing factory for the enrichment of your digital feudal overlords. Like that's, you need to make the opinions so that we can squeeze more money out of you. And that is, that's not very spiritually centered as an idea. And I mean, to talk about the book for a second, like that to me was the comedy. The title of the book came to me first, The Christian: a Comedy. Sort of, there's that book, American Genius, a comedy, I think by Lynn Tillman. And I remember loving that subtitular move or whatever. And I was like, I want to do that. And The Christian: a Comedy, that just came to me. And then I went, all right, guy takes Christianity seriously. 5 days, he's dead in America. And I was like, that's the joke. Okay, well, now I have to tell the joke. And it was a hard book to write. I spent a year trying to figure it out and failing. And then I just stepped away from it for a few months, for 6 months or something. And then just came back at it. And this is often how I wind up working. I just kind of cracked it on the second slow draft, and it all fell into place. And then I just revised from there and was good. But I did not want to write the end of this book. It was really painful and I did not want to deal with it. I didn't want to think about it. And, but I knew I had to do this sort of Grand Inquisitor thing, and I knew I had to have him die. And that would be that. And I had the final little couplet or final 2 sentences of the book. And I just like working towards the end is usually painful, but for this book, it really hurt. It feels to me so pointed at the moment in which I live and the country in which I live, and particularly where we're going now politically. constructing an enormous police state and just like all this shit, the dumb fascist shit. It feels really hard to be here and feel okay. And so I had to write a book that showed somebody trying to subvert the logic of be okay and in fact try to be good. And to show how hostile the culture is to goodness, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, how heartbreaking for somebody who's got like a healthy strain of idealism. I think I could fairly characterize you that way. I'm certainly that way.
Yeah.
And to like, as like an imaginative project to go through this and to just kind of quickly realize like, yeah, I think the over-under is on 5 days. That's how long somebody who's actually like walking this line would last in this like meat factory that we live in, which is like so cruel and so like proudly and like ostentatiously dumb.
Yes.
You know, just to kind of like circle back a little bit and also to try to get clear on where you're at. You know, you talked about this kind of personal spiritual journey that you went on after you had this kind of visionary experience or this visionary dream. You know, it's interesting you say you woke up crying, because the closest I've ever had to a mystical experience happened when I was on mushrooms. I write about it in my book. It's pretty close to like what actually happened. And I took like very copious notes, like in the immediate aftermath to try to get it clear, because it's hard to remember those things. But I wept. I wept like spontaneously in a way that I never have before or since. And it was like someone turned on the faucet. I like quit like for hours.
Yes.
It was wild. You know, it felt, and it was very cleansing too. It was like, wow, when it was done, I kind of felt like, you know, I'd been on a fast or something. But it's interesting that that's the response, you know, like they weren't sad tears. I mean, I guess there was some sadness in them, like, you know, but it wasn't like the prevailing emotion, you know, it was kind of like this, I don't even know what you would call it. I don't know if they were joy tears either. They were somewhere in between, I guess.
Yeah. There was a notion among the earliest Christians that crying was sort of the pinnacle of the Christian experience, that one could pray and one could try to have some sort of communion with God. But ultimately, if you were visited by tears, that was the sign that you're really cooking. All of the sort of early, essentially monastics or renunciates, like all the desert fathers and desert mothers, the people who just like put themselves in a weird little hut out there in the middle of nowhere and fought off spiritual demons and had weird thoughts. Crying was the sign that they were still locked in. And I feel like in a time in which like producing narcotization, producing numbness is the predominant sort of cultural export of this country, that like if you can cry, that means that you're resisting to some degree the dominant culture, because you still give enough of a shit to feel. And of course, this can be made maudlin and ridiculous by folks like Jordan Peterson, who go in public and cry to demonstrate the depth of their Christian experience or whatever. But I think it's a little bit different if you're doing it in private. You know what I mean? Like, or doing it in closed circumstances, not on CNN or whatever. Like,
not like in a performative way. You know,
exactly.
There's nobody watching, or maybe there is, but it's like an intimate, not like an audience. But it's interesting. Again, it's interesting to hear you say that, because there's like some sort of Buddhist guru, like, you know, John or meditation master, and there's a quote that is coming to my mind where he's like, I always tell my students, like, if you haven't wept during meditation, you really haven't gotten started yet. Same thing, you know, if you're not, so, you know, for everybody out there listening, you know, start crying.
Give it a shot. Try. And if you can't cry, there's a clue there, you know, you got to like rip open your heart a little bit.
Well, we joke, but it's actually, I mean, it's hard for me to cry.
Me too.
I'm not an easy crier typically. And I'm not somebody I think that's the last time I did cry. This was years ago. But actually, it's not true. Like every once in a while, especially if I'm thinking about my son and his issues, I don't know what it is. Like it's something like I'll be a little bit overcome. That's the one thing that can crack me. You know what I'm saying? And it's not like I'm made some sort of like conscious decision to be a hard ass or anything, but I just think like as a self-protective measure or just trying to move through the world and get shit done, it's like I don't have time for this.
Exactly. I wrote in one essay, I wrote something like the most sort of subversive act that a person could perform right now would be to sit on the ground in the middle of nowhere and weep with joy. That in other words, you're not an economic agent at all. You cannot be made into a productive cog, and you are desiring nothing. You are feeling ecstatic with some sense of love and acceptance, and you are feeling you're feeling pain and pleasure, and allowing yourself to sit in it and not run away from it or douse it with entertainment or whatever, but just like let that fire burn. And I think I really believe that sort of mode of just being and sitting with an open heart and allowing yourself to be fucked up, but also to not want anything. That again, there's no sort of political or economic scheme that can crack that or break that or co-opt that. I don't even think capitalism, which can basically sell anything to anybody, I don't think that can be sold, really. That's just too fucking weird. If you saw somebody doing that, you'd be like, oh God, I'm uncomfortable. But so even just aesthetically, you can't sell that. And I'm always looking for experience. I'm always looking for things like that. Like what can't be packaged, sold, commodified? Like what exists sort of outside the rules,
Well, the kind of experience that you're describing, and like this, you just kind of touched on it briefly. You said it would look really fucking weird. Mm-hmm. And I think it would look weird to me.
Yeah,
and
me too.
And to you,
yes, it would. We would feel uncomfortable. We'd be like, oh God, this person needs to be put someplace, or they need to talk to somebody, or they need to be whatever, Yeah.
So that's what I think, though. It's I think human beings have been fucked up in one way or another on this planet for thousands of years now. And if you're trying to imagine a future in which we organize ourselves and behave in such a way that the maximum degree of happiness and contentment and equity and, just harmony, like all these different things are achievable, the way in which we would have to live, I think, and the way in which we would have to think and relate to ourselves and to each other and to the environment would have to be pretty radically different than what it is now. It would be alien to almost every single human being, 99.9%. Like we would have to make some big changes, I think.
I'm of that mind. I mean, I really tried to plug into political work in 2016, like so many folks did, and I burnt out. I got arrested and was like, oh, okay, that's it for me. And then kind of checked out for a little bit. And that experience made me feel even more firmly a little shitty little anarchist than I felt when I was 17. That just I genuinely am right there with you. I believe that things need to be remade entirely. There's just so many nasty premises that have just been embedded in all this shit that we're not going to get rid of unless we really allow ourselves to ask serious questions and entertain them seriously. And unless you're willing to remake something, you're not really asking serious questions about it. I mean, and I think that's artists' experience too, right? If you feel locked into a draft or a canvas and you're not willing to just scrap it entirely and start again, or to question it entirely, or to change it significantly, you're not allowing yourself the freedom that an artist has and is sort of the sovereignty that an artist has. So you gotta be willing to just remake it from the ground up. And I think that's seems like everything's kind of screaming out for that right now, historically.
Yeah, this verb remake. I mean, I think one of the critiques that I've had, or that I've made mostly to myself, but occasionally in conversation over the years when it comes to contemporary Christianity, and in particular American Christianity, is that especially when you get into the more fundamentalist sects, but even in mainstream Catholicism, or this refusal, this dogmatic refusal to adapt and change and recalibrate, talking about things like, should women be allowed to be priests, or should gays be allowed to marry and be treated as equals within the church? And it seems like part of the problem is that people are really resistant, or at least certain people are really resistant to recalibrating these things. And in so doing, I think it hastens their demise.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that's good, because it's like, okay, this should perish, because it's more of a problem than it is a solution. But the tragedy of it is that this refusal to allow like a healthy evolution and reconsideration and a changing with the times it also happens to kill the very good and like precious things about it.
Yeah.
It's like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And so I think like a guy like Mike in your book, or a guy like you in your life, who, you know, is operating from a place of good faith and like healthy skepticism, and who had like an authentic, like mysterious, like kind of mystical experience with this dream, and is interested in this tradition in a kind of like both spiritual and academic way. Like you're really digging into the reading and trying to understand it and trying to figure out ways that it could be applicable to contemporary life. Like we need people like that to find a way to take the reins, because the men in robes in the Vatican are probably not going to lead the revolution. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how it happens, but it just seems like these things in so many ways are holding us back, because there are people in, you know, positions of power who have a personal vested interest in keeping things just as they are. Yeah. And it's not helpful. Yep.
I mean, it's hard. I think that there was some tweet I saw forever ago when that platform still existed, that said something like, if you walk into a men's bathroom in an airport, you'll realize that we'll never solve climate change. And, you know, meaning like, there's just like there's such an easy demonstration of our idiocy and stupidity and carelessness. And like, those lessons are everywhere, particularly with regards to men. And I had that serious talk with myself a little while ago about like, are we really gonna like get our shit together in time or not? And I came to the conclusion then, and I still believe now, that the answer is no. And so then what's left? Well, I think what's left is you have to do the best you can wherever you are. You have to live where you actually live, and you try to improve that situation for the folks who are your immediate neighbors. And maybe you can do a little bit of coordination at afar, you know, communications and the internet and whatever. But I don't foresee some global movement that's centered on principles of non-judgment or forgiveness or compassion or kindness or whatever. But I do see more and more people realizing that like, oh shit, if I want to live well, I have to live well right now, wherever I am. And I have to do it with the people who live by me and with me. And that's it. And hopefully those small moments of goodness will be meaningful, because I don't see solutions being articulated at scale that are not going to shoot us in the foot. And that's okay. I think that one has to be okay with that possibility, that there is some sort of sense of like a unified global political project that just we might not see in our lifetimes. And you got to make peace with that, because if you're just sitting around waiting and dreaming and hoping for the big capital P problems, fascism, climate crises, whatever, to be solved by the adults in the room, no one's a fucking adult. We're all kids. And the best that you can do in your life is don't wait around for some authority figure to go do the thing for you. Just try to do the thing that feels right where you are. And you'll see pretty immediately that that's nice and it works and you feel it. And it's real. It's not just on the fucking internet. There's like in Wave of Blood, that new-ish, the Ariana Rain's second newest book, there's some line like, you're not standing for anything, you're just posting, you know? Like, so you have to make that jump. You have to go, well, how do I, and I'm not saying this sanctimoniously, I'm saying I have to do it too, right? That I also suffer from this problem of mistaking like internet contained thinking and publishing and posting for real ethical political action. That just ain't it. You got to be a political animal wherever you are, and you don't live in the fucking internet. So just like go talk to your neighbors, take care of your parents, help people out with money who do what you can. And that's going to be your life. That's what you got.
So I'm curious about two things. First of all, can you define where you are in terms of like your spiritual orientation and practice? Like, are you going to church? Like, you talked about how you got to this point where you went around and talked to men in robes and then you sort of learned that like your interest was more philosophical, but have you developed like a practice? Do you consider yourself like a certain kind of Christian? Did you join? That's the first question.
No, I don't. I don't consider myself a Christian. I don't go to a church. I don't have any sort of visually, easily identifiable thing that was, if an alien were to see me, they'd go, oh, he's part of that group. I feel a little bit sort of Groucho Marx coded with regards to groups. Like, I don't really want to belong to a club that would have me as its member.
Yeah, right.
But I do have a sort of internal, and this is something I just had to learn when I was in the like deepest pit of depression in my life. I went, okay, well, how do I not die? Because this seems like it's going to wrap up pretty quick unless I change pretty radically. And I went, okay, well, it seems like I have to do two things to not die. The first thing is I have to talk to other people. I cannot just sit in my misery and pretend that I am incommunicably fucked up. And number two, I have to admit that I am like other people. There's a notion that I think is part of the depressed person's mind, an artifact of their very sickly mind that like says you're completely unique. No one can really fundamentally understand you. This sadness, this loneliness, this numbness, this isolation is essentially is in essence connected to you. And there's no way that somebody can build a bridge between themselves and you. That's gone. It ain't going to happen. So just wrap it up, be done with it, right? And that's the compulsion to leave. And I realized that if I do not admit that I am like other people, I'm cooked. So I admitted that I was like other people. And what that looked like practically, I was like, oh, I have to like take medicine and shit, and like talk to a therapist and be like, I'm not some special untreatable freak. I have a body and a brain, and it's probably mostly like other bodies and brains. So I'll just pretend, and we'll see if it works. And surprise, surprise, the meds and the talking to family and being honest worked, and I'm alive and great. But I think that experience I had crawling out of a depressive episode, a major depressive episode, was sort of like a structure that I now kind of carry with me. And I realized that, okay, in order to stay awake to that experience that I had and not just try to, drown it or forget it or run away from it, that I have to constantly remind myself of it. And so there's a lot of times in which I just sort of will be sort of quietly sitting somewhere, and I just try to feel that feeling again. And I can't just conjure that like extremely intense, transcendent sense of love. I can't just snap and feel that.
Wait. So you're trying to feel the feeling from the dream? Yes. Not the depressed, like,
no, not the,
okay.
I'm okay to just leave that one in the dirt.
Yeah.
But I try to feel that feeling from the dream. And even if I can't feel it, I remind myself of my conviction that that is the case, right? That the sort of message of the dream is true. And that means that I start to, the sort of anxious, reactionary judgment brain starts to kind of shut down a little bit. The moodiness, anger starts to fall away. And I just go, oh, okay. All right. Well, if I can just be any kind of way and still be loved, I might as well embrace that and see what happens. So it's mostly private and internal and psychological. And it's also related to how I treat other people, and particularly how I think politically. I used to be really sort of politically judgmental about everyone around me, all us little plebes and all of our misbehaviors and poor attitudes and lack of ethics. And I realized that, like, in order to make sense of that dream, and also just be a political animal, I gotta have some right ideas. And to me, the right ideas will focus all of your political acumen and judgment and critique on power and powerful people. Powerful people are the people responsible for the shit we're sitting in. And yes, we all chip in our ways, and we all get plugged into systems that create and recreate the conditions of sadness and misery and oppression or whatever. But powerful people are the people holding the fucking reins, making the decisions, writing the checks, ordering the bombs dropped, ordering the people disappeared, building the cages, penalizing people who live in other countries for the fact that they live in other countries, imagining borders. Like, powerful people are the people doing all this shit. So I should take my very limited energy and focus it on a correct understanding and assessment of power, so that I can try to bridge any sort of political disagreements that I have with other, my fellow plebes, and go, hey, we should focus on the people with all the money and the power, because they're the ones that are fucking us. It's not, we actually don't have any real animosity to one another. There's a great scene in Grosse Pointe Blank, where John Cusack meets his high school bully in the hallway, and his high school bully's kind of drunk, and he starts to want to try to pick a fight. And John Cusack grabs him by the shoulders, and he's like, there is no us. Us is an illusion. There's no bullied. It's just two people. And then, of course, the drunk bully is like, can I read you some poetry? It's a very good, very funny scene. But I think that is the case for most people, that there's no culture war. There's no antagonism. All that shit is just imagined, stupid, binary, childish, good guy, bad guy, cops and robbers type thinking. There are people who have power and there are people who don't. And 99.9% of people on Earth don't have any fucking power. And so we should realize that and then try to use that fact to either get some power or change what power has access to. I think that's it. That's everything else feels like a waste of time to me, just a distraction, just like a game that we're all playing, just cannibalism among the poor. And so that also helps me feel really non-judgmental towards people who maybe, 5-10 years ago, I would have eaten myself up with judgment, petty judgment about, they're posting the wrong shit, or they said the wrong thing in public, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a case to be made that the people in power have a vested interest in making sure that the plebes are cannibalizing one another, so that they can walk away with the money more easily without.
There's a great quote from some kind of titan industry type where he's like, I could just pay half of the farmers to shoot the other half of the farmers and solve my problem for me. And that money is still real. And that scale is realer than it's ever been. That sort of disparity in power and scale. So we just need to chill the fuck out and actually coordinate, and then make sure that, billionaires can exist, and that we're actually living in communities that we articulate for ourselves, not just, inhabit the shitty little buildings that are built for us.
Yeah. Like the husk of, whatever the scraps they throw us or whatever.
Yeah.
But I have a second question before I forget, and it has to do with kind of the premise of your book and this guy, Mike, who goes out and actually tries to live radically like Jesus himself. I know it's obviously on your mind. Have you ever come close to being like, you know what, I'm going to do this?
I've had moments. I mean, that little Buddhist freak out when I was in my teens was close. I've had moments, and this sort of question I answered for myself, I want to say definitively, also when I crawled out of the last depressed hole. I realized.
When was that? How long ago was it? Was this years ago or?
Yeah, this
recently?
was maybe 5-6 years ago, something like that. I don't know. Depression is a really strange thing. It just completely obliterates the time around it. So it's hard to parse out when things happened when you're in that state. But I just told myself, I'm going to love the people I love. I'm not going to walk away from them. And that also extends to this silly little country. I'm not a patriot. I'm not a patriotic person, nor will I ever be patriotic. I think this country is very disgusting, and we do so much wrong. And there's just the notion of a nation is so stupid. It's all just so childish. But anyway, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to fucking stick it out. I'm going to be here, even if shit gets really gnarly for folks of my class and background and whatever. I'm just going to be here. And if that means I die early, well, so what? Like I want to be around the people I love, and I want to help them. And I'm not going to walk out of my life, even if it's for some, higher sense of purpose. I'm going to try to help the people I love, and maybe, that'll come in conflict with general ethical principles or whatever at some point. But so far, so good. I can be around the people I love. I can help them. And then, I'm just going to have to get killed to stop doing that or die, because I like these people. They're great. I like love Santa Fe. I love my neighbors. I love this community. It's, I think loving where you are is such a nice thing to do. It's such a lovely invitation. If you just say yes, man, life becomes so much more interesting. I think if you're not just if you don't have a baseline resentment to where you live or to the people around you, if you just go, no, these people are good and interesting, I want to help them. Shit gets way more interesting, particularly as an artist. I feel like you got to have that kind of heart to write a good novel. If you're sort of a revanchist or are fundamentally skeptical of other people, I don't know how you're going to write good characters. I don't buy that.
Yeah, you got to have a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit of humility too. If you think everybody around you is fucked up and problematic, chances are the problem is you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like if everywhere you go, everyone's an asshole. You're probably the asshole, is what it is.
Yeah, but I don't know. So no walking out of my life yet. No promises, of course, but I'm going to try not to.
Portugal does sound lovely, I gotta say.
Absolutely. I qualify for Italian citizenship. Trust me, if I get those papers, I'm good. I'm chilling.
I do too. And they just changed the law.
Wait, what?
This spring.
More.
Yeah, no, I literally was on the doorstep. I got the last fucking document. It took me 2 years, and then the Italians changed the law about
what is
citizenship through a great grandparent.
Oh fuck! Oh, yeah. Cooked. I'm cooked. Oh no! Oh, that's so sad. Well, my mom still qualifies because it's her grandpa. So at least maybe she qualify?
Maybe she could do it. I mean, you'd have to get into the law, but they literally just, because there was this huge flood of people who were doing it, they were like, wait a minute, these people don't speak Italian. Like they haven't lived here for generations. And I was sort of like, okay, you caught me. Like,
Yeah. You got guilty.
Yeah, guilty.
Fuck. Well, that saves me $3,000, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And I like the idea of not walking out. I like that kind of defiance in a way. And I like the idea of sticking with your family and your community and the place that you are and the people that you know. And thinking of those things outside of, I love this. I'm not a patriot either. I hate that shit. Like, this is my flag. And it's like, come on, man, like, grow up.
Grow up.
We're celestial beings.
Stop watching Marvel movies.
We're in like outer space. Nobody knows where the fuck they are. And like, let's just get real,
Yeah, exactly.
But I like that's like the immediacy of things. Like, the people in your immediate sphere, your family, your friends, your neighbors, and then the people that you just like interact with on a day-to-day, that's the place to start. And another term that was kind of like coming to mind for me as I was listening to you, and as, kind of like feels like it's tied to the entire conversation that we've been having, is that when you think about the problems that we're having, the trouble that America is in particular, but just like the trouble that the species is in, like writ large, like I can't escape this idea that it is a kind of spiritual crisis. Mm-hmm. Like, forget politics. Yeah. Like the politics are fucked up because our spiritual situation is fucked up. And that doesn't mean that like we believe in a sky god. I'm not talking about that. Yeah. I'm talking about like deep internal work. Mm-hmm. And it could even be understood maybe through like a Western therapeutic model.
Sure.
Like the work that you did coming out of this depression, where you had to kind of get humble and you had to admit that you're a person, and you had to kind of talk to people and get some therapy and some meds and self-investigate and get honest.
Yeah.
Like that work is like that's what I'm kind of getting at more than anything. And maybe like coming to grips with all that we don't know and having humility around that and accepting the terror of not knowing.
Yeah.
And I don't think we could ever possibly get our political house in order or get some sort of like big picture situation figured out in the absence of that. And I think that's just on each of us as individuals. I guess maybe you can organize collectively, locally or something, and do it together. That's probably a good idea, in fact. But
sure,
it's never going to be like all human beings at once.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like that Gibson quote, "The future's here. It's just unevenly distributed." Like good living is the same thing. It always has been. There's been plenty of good. It's hard to find it in history because history books don't get written about the small good things. They get written about the big bad things. But like, yeah, there's plenty of good to be done and good to be had and experienced, but a lot of it does rely on you figuring out what that means for yourself and then practicing. And yeah, of course, the world from any sort of account of it looks like a fucking emergency room because that's what's loud. But like, yeah, there are innumerable already, infinite acts of kindness, charity, forgiveness, compassion, whatever, fill in the blank, pick your nice word of choice. And we will never know about them. And they are, lived and practiced by little people. And that's a good thing. The powerless, these are the things that keep reality going. And all of the dramatic soap opera-esque power machinations of extremely wealthy idiot children, like, man, like that, don't just let them concern themselves with themselves. And again, like that's a recovering addict thing too. You got to know what you have power over. You got to know what you don't have power over. I'm in that boat. And so just know that you can control some circumstances of your life, and you can try to be a loving person with other folks. And that's that. Those are the options. Otherwise, it's just like, invest yourself in the doings of billionaires and their lackeys and fight some imagined fight. But I don't know. I tried to do that and it almost killed me. So I don't think it's like a very sustainable way to be. It's much simpler and better to just be like, okay, if I'm a kid, how do I love myself and love other kids? And how do we just like have a good time together and, pass our time wisely? I don't know. It's a lot of pontificating, but I feel like you have to think structurally like this right now because the culture is so deranged. And if you're not thinking like this, you're going to just get swept up in one cult or another, and that's dangerous. It's very dangerous.
So I didn't know you're sober. Did I know that you're sober?
Yeah.
Since when?
Since 2012. So it's been a little while.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So I mean, this was back when you were still in LA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was the year I got sick is when I quit drinking.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of close to when I met you, but it was drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And we have, last time you were on the show was what, 2013, I think?
Yeah. Yep.
And then you moved to Santa Fe when?
So quit acting 2012, got sick, started to get my life together sort of, and then moved in 2013 to Santa Fe.
12 years.
Yeah. So I've been in Santa Fe now longer than I was in Los Angeles, which feels crazy because that was like a whole career and a life and blah, blah, blah. But
for people listening, Ken was a child superstar actor on The Secret Life of the American Teenager. You were on that show.
God.
What was the network that it was on?
It was on ABC Family, which it's not, I guess it's free form now maybe, but ABC Family was the first name of the network. And it was a popular show, I guess, among a certain crowd, and ran for a while and almost killed me and paid me well. And that was that. And convinced me that the film and TV industry was not for me, or that I was not for it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, talk about like a microcosm of all that we've been talking about. The film and TV industry is, you know, Jesus Christ. I don't know what it would take to reform it, but you're a fascinating figure to me, and you're like a deeply thoughtful and like intellectually like voracious and sincere person. And we met, and you were kind of coming off of this TV experience, and you'd been out here since you were like a kid. Like you came out to LA and like stayed in those condos. What are they called out in
Oakwood,
yeah.
The Oakwood Apartments.
Which like all the young like aspiring child actors, they come out and they set up camp there and they go on auditions, and then you landed this show and it becomes a hit, and it runs for 5 years or whatever it was. And then you're like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'm done. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because you've had this big success. You could have probably kept pursuing acting, and you had a nice springboard. You had an early success. Yeah. But you were like, I don't want to run that race. Yep. And then you've since gone on to, you went to school in Santa Fe. Yep. At whatchamacallit. What's the name of the school again?
St. John's College is the name of it.
Which is a very, like, what's the word? Like you're reading the Greeks and shit. Like you're reading like, it's like a very like old school liberal arts and like philosophical education, like a good education.
Yeah, I think so.
And then you've been running your own imprint, which I think predates your exit from Los Angeles. Like you started that, I think, when you were still here. So your interest in books has been long running, and it crossed over with your acting. But then you've just been like living in Santa Fe, writing books. And what I would and like you got super tatted up, like I don't know if you can see, but Ken is inked, like like all over the place. And I just think like I have admiration for you for like saying goodbye to all that. Like not a lot of people do that. Like a lot of people just hang on, even if they don't love it, or even if they feel like it's toxic and bad for them. And you had the good sense to be like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go like follow my convictions and, go do something different with my life and try to seek maybe a deeper meaning. And, making books and living in Santa Fe and thinking deeply about these things and maybe pursuing like a spiritual interest. I just think it's really cool. And I'd love to hear you talk. Do you have any regrets? Like, do you ever think to yourself, I'm going to get back into acting, or no?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying many, many kind things. And, I hope some of them are true. I don't think I would ever act formally or professionally again. I think I kind of burnt out those synapses. I had been doing it a while, like did it for 12 years straight, more or less. I didn't really have a childhood. I just was sort of like, I tried to be a little adult from the time I was like 10 on. And I met my wife working in TV and film. And that was the important thing. I met my wife. I got paid well enough to publish other people's books, and I got to like be in LA, which is a cool literary scene. So I got to meet folks like you. I got to like feel like a part of a community of writers, readers, intellectuals. And that was cool. That I feel like was crucially important. But then the TV and film stuff, I burnt out. I don't really have regrets. The one thing, like, I wish I hadn't been binge eating so much before like my guts exploded with Crohn's disease sometimes. Cause I'm like, man, that like was scary and that like sucked. And
was that because of binge eating?
Yeah. I mean, it's a chicken and the egg question to some degree. Like I had Crohn's, genetically, but like phenotypically, I probably like lit the match by trying to kill myself with fucking eating. I mean, I was really binge eating 3+ nights a week at restaurants all over LA County. I was trying to eat at every restaurant in that Jonathan Gold 99 essential restaurants list from back in the day. Remember that Jonathan Gold, rest in peace?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I got money. I'm bored. I hate myself. Let's eat some food. And so I just like, I was really obliterating myself with food. And then, my guts like exploded. I just like had leaky guts and was diced open, and 18 inches of guts were ripped out of me, and they sewed me back up. And this was like 3 months before I was getting married. It was insane. It was like a very crazy thing for a young person to experience. Sometimes I regret that, but then I also realized that like, getting sick and then getting well-ish again really taught me how to be a good animal. Like I don't think I knew I had intuitions about how to be good or how to be okay, but I didn't really know how to like accept myself and be kind to myself and other people until I was completely humbled and humiliated and brought as low as one can be brought. And so, yeah, that was super useful. But no regrets about leaving the industry. Sometimes I'm like, damn, this mortgage sucks. I wish I were like had that Disney money again, because that shit was evil and large. And like, I'm not making the Disney money anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't regret it. Ultimately, I just copied my wife. She was an actress, and she quit first. And I was like, I see what this industry is doing to women. I don't like this shit. This seems really bad. Like any industry that makes women feel the way that industry made my wife feel, I feel like is not a place for me. And so I just followed her. She quit first, and I went, me too. And then found this college and moved to Santa Fe. And my wife's family's from here, and now all of our immediate family are all here in Santa Fe. So I think we made the move successfully. But I appreciate the kind words. I don't think I'm particularly enlightened or anything for quitting. I recommend that if the money is not necessary for you or your family, and you're in some kind of line of work that you don't respect, it will catch up with you and you will start to hate yourself. I know that. That's just like math. And then that will really hurt you and make you sick. So avoid that and quit while the getting's good, and go do something else that you like more or can live with more peaceably. I recommend that. It saved my life getting out of the industry, but it's not all bad,
Yeah. Everything's a mixed bag ultimately, but there's some pretty like structural problems with it. And it's just a hard business. It's so competitive, and
yes,
it's like, you got to really get some breaks, and you got to be wired for it. It's like the old Jerry Seinfeld line. I remember him saying like, the only people who should be in show business are like the people who would die if they don't succeed. Like, it's like, I'm either going to succeed at this or I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And like, I think he's actually kind of right. Like, you sort of have to be like that level of psychotic about it.
Yeah.
You've got to be like your identity's got to be so invested in, I guess, like being famous or rich or both, that you just would die if it didn't happen.
Yeah.
That seems like the only way to tolerate all the bullshit that goes with it. And
I'll die for cooler stuff than that. Like if there's like, oh, cool, die because you do a good thing, and there's a bad fascist guy doing a bad thing. Like, sure, I'll die for that. Easy, cool. Great period at the end of my story. Excellent. But to be on fucking TV, come on, like it's not that cool anymore. It's just not that cool anymore.
How old are you now?
I'm 35, I think. Yeah, something like that.
So when we met, you were like 21, 22 years old.
Yep.
And it's funny to hear you say that you like didn't really have a childhood, because I remember I would have been in my, 12, 13 years ago, I would have been in my mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, I think Ken might be older than I am. or at least it felt like you had your shit together better than I did. Cause I was like, God, this guy's on an ABC show. He's like super brilliant. He's talking to me. He's got it. Like you carried yourself like you were older. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's maybe common to people who are child actors or who work in like a real job from a young age.
Yep.
But it was interesting to hear you say that, because that was definitely the takeaway. I think most people who knew you then, who were older than you, would have probably said the same thing.
It's so strange. I mean, it's all just pretend. I just was like wearing the mask well, I think. Yeah. I mean, there are in many respects, like so many Americans, I'm sure, I feel like I'm like 5,000 years old. I feel like there's like way too much to this shit that I've lived through and seen and watched and felt. And can we just like slow down or chill out for a little while? But in many respects, I feel like since moving to Santa Fe, going to school is actually partially for me just like being a kid again and doing what I wanted. And I was like, you know what I liked when I was a kid? I really liked reading books. So I'm just going to go do that for 4 years and like burn all of the money that I made, just light it all on fire, put it in this college's coffers, but then I'll go read the books. And since moving to Santa Fe, I've really had to like learn how to be a kid and like what what that means and what a childhood is for. I feel like childhood is so, if you're lucky and you're not growing up in terrible circumstances, you're not growing up in an abusive household, etc. Childhood is really where you kind of learn to be okay being by yourself and learn how to like yourself and learn how to follow your own interests sort of naively. And I think I had put all that shit aside for a long time to just pretend to be an adult and go make money and like work. And so I've had to, and I think getting tattoos is part of that. I swear to God, like getting tattoos for me has been a good, sort of expensive, but not so bad, antidepressant technology. If you like your body, if you think it looks really cool, you don't want to kill it, because then if you're dead, you can't look at it. And that's like silly. So look, but also it's been like, this feels silly. This feels arbitrary. This feels like I'm taking a marker and like, coloring on the walls a little bit. I'm like putting ink where ink isn't supposed to be. And that's been so incredible and has really like transformed my relationship with my body, I think, where I love my body and I love like adorning it and making it look insane. It's so fun and so childlike, and we get to do this shit. No one's like forbidding it legally or culturally. And that's not the case everywhere. So I feel very lucky in that respect too. But like, yeah, learning how to be a kid if you don't have a childhood for various reasons, because of trauma or work or whatever, I think you got to do it, because yeah, that is a genuine source of resentment. If you feel like you never had that freedom and never had that sort of independence and naivete or whatever, that you'll take that shit to your grave. So I was like, okay, I'm moving to Santa Fe. I got to learn how to be a kid, and then I'll be an adult again. Once I'll get my taste and figure out how to do both. And I'm still working on it, but I think getting out of the industry was crucial for me, and getting out and getting into a smaller town, a place that's just kind of less stressful just to do daily shit.
Well, speaking of delayed childhoods, for people listening, Ken has conducted this entire interview wearing a Batman costume, which now makes a lot more sense to me than it did when you first came on the screen.
Yeah, I went back and forth. I was like, Batman is sort of the fascist, like revanchist superhero, but that's very reflective of our time. So we'll do this. It was either that or a dinosaur outfit, and ultimately I went with Batman outfit.
I'll take Batman over Barney any day.
And, me too. Yeah,
it's a symbolic choice. It's a symbolic choice.
Yeah, at least one guy knows how to have fun and spend money. At least one guy has style. You can't say Barney has style. He doesn't have clothes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome to catch up with you, and congratulations on all that you have going. Talk a little bit, just because I don't know if we necessarily nailed it down for people listening. We talked about The Christian, your new novella, but you've got, you did the Sator Press for a long time. I think you then gave that library away to $2 Radio. Is that right? Yep. They have the books that you had published under your own imprint.
Exactly.
And then
right.
You've got like other projects in the works or things that people should know about.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to my extremely stripped down, very bad website, kenbaumann.com, it looks like shit, and I'm very proud of it. You'll see the books I've written. I've written 10 of them, which is unfortunate. But I like some of them, and hopefully you will too. I'm right now, The Christian and Comedy is my latest book. You can get it on Amazon, unfortunately. And then you can read it for free on Substack. And if you want a PDF copy, just email me. I'll just send it to you. And then I'm working on an anthology called You May Now Fail to Destroy Me, American Writers on Their Most Dangerous Beliefs, with Blake Butler. And that is going to probably ship out in September. We're going to take orders for it in August, but you can find more info about that at failtodestroy.me. I'm excited about that book. It just felt like I've known Blake's like one of my oldest friends in the world. And I was like, we just have been talking weekly for a long time. And we're like, I think now artists need to say the true things as loudly and explicitly and directly as possible. No more wasting time. Just say the true things. Don't punch down. Speak truth to power, etc. Because I don't know how much time we got left in that regard. And so let's just get it going. That anthology is going to come out soon. And then, I had a weird erstwhile flirtation with Magic the Gathering competitively, and like won some tournaments and stuff and was the world champion for a second. And that was really weird. So if you like Magic the Gathering and you want to plug me into that hobby, just Google Ken Baumann Magic and a lot of stuff will pop up, particularly about Commander. And yeah, that's it for now, I think. I don't think I have any other projects doing. I'm really trying to not write not write. I really like not writing. Writing is also cool, but not writing, man, if you can be okay with that, it's so nice. It's just so nice to not have to do it. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to just have some time of, I tell my wife I want to be her pool boy. That's my spiritual and vocational aspiration. I just want to be hot, kind of lay around, read some books, cook her dinner, you know, like I'm ready for that lifestyle. So I'm reaching for that.
Those tattoos. I mean, that's good. I feel like if you're a pool boy with tattoos.
Bingo. That was the whole gambit. I was like, I just need to get, if I get hot enough, surely my wife will just carry me into the future financially. And she's doing her best. She's doing a great job.
Awesome. Well, it's great to catch up with you. Congrats on all of the above. I wish you well, and I hope our paths cross before too long.
Me too. Thank you, Brad. It's great to see you.
Okay, there we have it. That was my talk with Ken Baumann about his new novella, The Christian, a comedy. It is available now. What a wonderful conversation that was, right? That one's going to stick with me for a while. And it's great to catch up with Ken. I haven't talked to him in too long. So it was like it was great to interview him, but it was also great just to talk with him for the first time in a while. And you can find out more about him and what he's up to at his website, kenbaumann.com. I believe he's on Bluesky. And again, the book is called The Christian, a comedy. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen. If you haven't done that already, you can also subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow me on Bluesky and Instagram. If you have a couple of minutes and you want to do me a quick favor, please give this show a rating wherever you listen. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Rate it, review it. It helps the show in the algorithm, and it helps it find new listeners. My new company is called Deep Dive, and it will be launching soon. You can join the waitlist at www.deepdive.audio, and you can follow Deep Dive on Bluesky and Instagram. Oh yeah, you can join my newsletter. If you want to read my newsletter or get it delivered to your inbox once a week, you can do that at bradlisti.substack.com. And if you love this show, if you get something from it, if you feel like the work that I do adds value to your existence, I hope you will support this show over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. I would appreciate that. patreon.com/otherpplpod. Finally, if you want to join my book club or get an Other People t-shirt or a sweatshirt, you can do all of the above at the show's official website, otherppl.com. Okay, so coming up on Tuesday, I will be in conversation with Hannah Pittard, who is a returning champion, and she is celebrating the publication of a new novel called If You Love It, Let It Kill You. You've probably heard of this one. She just got profiled in the New York Times. We talk about it. We talk about what it's like to be profiled in the New York Times, what it's like to have a photographer come to your house and start taking your photo and telling you how to pose. It's maybe not the most natural mode for a writer of fiction to be in. So it's always fun talking with Hannah. She's the best, and that episode is coming your way on Tuesday. So stay tuned.